listening to Season 2, Episode 10 of Vixen, a Black beauty and pop culture podcast. If you enjoy what you hear today, please leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts. Today's episode is the Season 2 finale, and it is a film review episode, and it is a long one, y'all. So if it's nighttime when you're listening to it, go ahead and grab you some wine, pour a glass, or pour a nice, cocktail or whatever it is, whatever your vice is. If it's daytime, make sure you have a cold drink, your coffee, whatever it is, but you're going to want something because this is a long one. Now, let's start the show. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Vixen. Here we are again for another finale episode. I really cannot believe it, y'all. It feels like this season specifically really flew by very quickly for me. So I just can't believe I'm sitting here recording the finale now. But if you didn't already know this, the podcast goes by seasons, and every season has 10 episodes. And then we take a short break, which is usually about a month long until the next season. The 10th and final episode of each season is a themed film review. So before I share the theme for this one, I want to go ahead and get some announcements out of the way first. I've mentioned on a couple other episodes about the book club and getting the book club started, and I am proud to say that it is finally here. You can sign up for the Vixen Book Club right now. All you have to do is go to the website, which is thevixenmemoirs.com, and it's also going to be in my show notes. So you just go to thevixenmemoirs.com, plug in your first name, last name, and email address, and hit the sign up button. Then you're going to go to the email address you use and just confirm your subscription, and then boom, you're already in. You're a part of the book club just like that. So I am going to send out a free PDF of the book for the month of February on January 22nd. So basically, on January 22nd, you're going to get an email from me, and it's going to have the book information as well as a PDF version of the book. So the book club is 100% free. If you don't mind reading on like your tablet, your laptop, your phone, you're going to have a free PDF of the book so you don't have to worry about it. But the book club officially starts on February 1st. But I am going to send the book out a week earlier because I know some people might be like me. So I love to physically hold a book. It's kind of hard for me to read on a screen. I'm not really a Kindle person. So if you're like me, I want to give you a week to go buy the book if you prefer that. But you don't have to start reading until February 1st. Or if you guys want to go ahead and get a head start and start reading on the 22nd, you can totally do that. I'm just trying to give people some extra time if they want to buy the book. So again, the book club is completely free to join. It's completely free to be a part of it. You're going to get a free PDF of our book for the month every single month. And then at the beginning of the following month, we will have a virtual discussion to discuss what we read and discuss the book and go over a couple things before we start reading our next book. So go ahead and go to the website and sign up, y'all, because it's getting closer and closer to the 22nd, and I want everyone to get the book at the same time. So go ahead and sign up now. If you do sign up after the book club starts, that's totally fine still. You'll just get the book a little bit later. You'll just have less time to read, basically, than other people do. But I want y'all to have at least 4 or 5 weeks to read because there's so much going on with this pandemic. Like, give yourself some time. So go ahead and sign up now. All right, so that's announcement 1. Okay, announcement 2. So like I said, the podcast goes on a short break after every season. So we're going to go on a break after this, but then we will come back for season 3 on March 3rd. So don't forget, the podcast is back on March 3rd. In the meantime, join the Vixen Book Club so we can still chat. And then follow us on Instagram if you don't already. There will be more content on the Instagram while we're not podcasting. So just make sure you stay connected with us through the book club, through Instagram, email me, DM me, whatever you need to do. And I will be back after March 3rd. All right, so those are the announcements. I'm sorry if I sound a little wired, y'all. I just had some matcha stuff. I'm on 20, but let me drink some water. I'm going to calm down because now my mouth's dry. Okay, let's get into the episode. So I started writing Vixen in January or February, a couple of weeks before lockdown happened officially, and then the podcast was launched in August. So it has been created throughout the entire pandemic. And I have to say, it's definitely been helping me get through the pandemic, amongst other things like wine. But no, I mean, this has definitely been therapeutic for me, and it's helped, it's just helped move things along in the pandemic. You guys are living through it too, so you know how hard it is and how it's great to have a hobby and have a thing, when you're stuck at home at times like this. So while we've been in the pandemic, I personally have been thinking a lot about friendship and the importance of having like a strong sisterhood around you, just strong relationships in general, especially with your girlfriends. So sisterhood has always been important to me, but I have really, really leaned on my girlfriends to get through 2020. So, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that as well. So I thought there would be no better topic for the finale than sisterhood itself. So in this episode, we're going to discuss and analyze the examples of sisterhood in Living Single and Girlfriends. I was really happy when Netflix added a bunch of Black programming to the platform. So I binged Girlfriends, I want to say like maybe October or November. Before that, I was already binging Living Single on Hulu, but I had kind of fell off with it. So when I decided I wanted to do this episode, I went ahead and finished it up. So now both series are pretty fresh in my mind. I actually did a poll comparing both shows and its characters on Instagram with y'all the other day, and I'm going to share some of the opinions later in the episode. But I want to start with a very brief history of both shows, share a couple little known facts, and then share my thoughts on both shows, and then we're going to get into the poll. Okay. Living Single was created by Yvette Lee Bowser and ran from 1993 to 1998 on Fox. Yvette, who was 27 years old at the time, which is my age now, was working as a writer on A Different World and hanging with Mr. Cooper. An executive at Warner Brothers calls Yvette up and they're like, hey, we're looking to do a friendship-based comedy based on two friends, and we want those two friends to be Kim Coles and Queen Latifah. So Warner was specifically shopping around for a Black writer to create the show around these two women because both of them had starred in pilots for Warner Brothers before, and they both kind of flopped. And Warner Brothers believed that it was because those shows were written by white writers. So basically they just wanted someone who could tell a Black story. So that's where Yvette came in. The show that was created from that was Living Single, and it starred Kim Fields as Regine, Queen Latifah as Khadijah, Erica Alexander as Maxine, Kim Coles as Sinclair, T.C. Carson as Kyle, and John Hinton as Overton. It revolved around the 620-somethings and their professional and personal relationships. So Overton and Kyle were childhood best friends and roommates, and they lived upstairs from Regine, Khadijah, and Sinclair. Sinclair and Khadijah were cousins, and Regine was Khadijah's childhood best friend, and then Maxine lived across the street from them, and she was Khadijah's college friend, basically. In an interview with The Atlantic in 2018, Yvette said, each of the characters are parts of me and my girlfriends, and then they're very much informed by the actors who played them. And certainly the deepness of the characters was definitely informed by all the other actors who were cast in the show. Kim Fields and Erica Alexander. So one of my favorite things about Living Single is how accurately it depicted New York City life, which we don't get a lot of accurate takes on. We will get into it later. But the majority of the cast being roommates was definitely on point. I actually read in my research that some early critiques of the show didn't understand that aspect. Like, why are all of these adults with jobs living together? But if you've lived in New York or you visited New York, you know that's very accurate, right? And notice how Maxine is the only character that lives alone. And it's likely because she is an attorney, which is definitely true to New York City. It reminds me a lot of my cousin ML. Shout out ML. And he was one of the only people I knew for a long time who had their own place. And he's also a lawyer. Love that for Maxine, especially because she was the only dark-skinned woman in the cast. So I love that she was the one with her own place and was an attorney. Another great thing about Living Single was that the cast all had their own thing. Like they all had different professions. They were in different fields. Khadijah was the founder and editor of her own magazine. Sinclair was a receptionist, and then she got into acting and improv. Regine was in retail, and then she starts working as an event planner. Overton was a handyman and like the super of the building, basically, and then Kyle was a stockbroker. Also in the interview with The Atlantic, Yvette said, the mix of class was definitely intentional because we're not a monolith, and we also, at the time, didn't have that many depictions of us. So I was really trying to put as many versions of us as I could into the show. in ways that made sense, that felt organic. And I definitely feel like that was portrayed through the show. Like, even though their jobs were so different from each other, they all got along really well. There was definitely a strong chemistry there. So here's my last favorite thing about Living Single, I promise. I also liked how the romantic relationships that mattered were so nurtured and the characters kind of took their time. So like how Khadijah and Scooter were longtime friends first, then we saw Overton and Sinclair blossom into marriage, and then we saw the back and forth between Kyle and Max. Like, and when I say the relationships that mattered, like those relationships were, you know, they definitely took their time on those, but like the flings and stuff would happen really fast. Like you would see one guy one episode and then another guy the next, but those were the ones that really didn't matter. I just felt like there was more chemistry between the Living Single girls and their romantic interests than the Women on Girlfriends, and it might be because we saw those relationships really, you know, be nurtured throughout the show. I really did not like a lot of the boyfriends on Girlfriends. Oh my God. Like, I felt like a lot of the boyfriends that the girls had, they didn't make sense. But some of them were good, but a lot of them just felt wrong. But we'll talk about that later too. Okay, so random facts about Living Single. Yvette revealed in 2018 that executives originally wanted to cut Maxine from the cast because they thought she was too brash. So y'all, Yvette really had to fight to keep Maxine Shaw on the show. The studio ended up compromising because Yvette actually threatened to walk away and they really didn't want to lose her. So Yvette decided, all right, we're going to have Maxine live across the street instead of with the other three women, which is where she lived originally. In an interview with ET, she said, I said to lose her would be to lose a huge part of me in the show. I got more comedy from the fact that she was always there, even though she didn't live there. It turned out to be a great thing that she didn't end up on the cutting room floor, but ended up being a huge part of the show, which was always the intention. Can you guys imagine the show without Maxine? And also, Maxine is that character that is the people's champ on the show. You know how everyone talks about Tony from Girlfriends? That's like everybody's undisputed fave. I feel like Maxine is that character for Living Single. Another thing that I found really cute was that in the episode where Shamar Moore kisses Sinclair, John Hinton, not Overton, real life actor John Hinton, was actually upset about that. Like, he was, you know, sad about it. And I also read that he was really excited when he got to take on the role of Overton because he was a fan of Kim Coles and he wanted to, you know, play her love interest and play opposite her. So he really respected her. So I just thought that was cute. Mara Brock-Akil was a 29-year-old staff writer at Moesha when she started working on her first network show. It was 1999, and she felt like Black women were being erased from primetime television, which from what I remember is very accurate. There weren't a lot of shows that even had Black women as cast members, let alone had us leading a whole show. In a 2020 interview with Glamour, Mara said, I wanted Black women to feel seen. I was tired of us playing in the background, and in some cases, we couldn't even play in the background. I wanted Black women to see and enjoy their complexity, to see their beauty reflected. So the show, Girlfriends, premiered in 2000 on UPN, starring Tracee Ellis Ross as Joan, Jill Marie Jones as Tony, Persia White as Lynn, and Golden Brooks as Maya. Girlfriends also had a cast with a variety of careers and socioeconomic classes. So we had Joan as a lawyer, Maya was a receptionist, and then she became an author. Tony was a high-end real estate agent, and Lynn was kind of struggling with what she wanted to do professionally and just kept going back to school for more degrees, and then she eventually became a singer. Can I just say that when I was younger and watched Girlfriends for the first time, I felt like Lynn was like dumb or like she was a bum or a moocher. I mean, she was a moocher. But now that I'm older, I can relate to her a little bit more about not knowing exactly where you want to go in your professional career. So I do like that they had a character like that because that's real. Here's a condensed quote from the Glamour article by Mara that I thought was interesting. Maya, to me, is the embodiment of the American dream. For her to come in as an assistant from meager means and with the challenges and obstacles that sometimes accompany being a teenage mother in society, and for her to believe in and dream for herself was, for me, very revolutionary. Next, I wanted to make space for a Black woman who didn't know her direction. Lynn represents an opportunity to not know. Because she has the riches and resources of friends and family supporting her, and although she might not have a lot of money in her pocket and clear direction, she proves that any of us can survive and find our way if we have a village of support. Joan was able to have so much and build on her dreams because of the financial stability of her family. I remember people saying she had a house at 29, but I was like, you never question when white people have houses at 29. Why can't she have a house at 29? And Toni pulled herself up by her bootstraps. She escaped. How many of us have escaped the town or environment we're in to get more? Toni is willing to work hard, and she's unafraid and bold about getting that. Definitely agree with that. I think that them all being from different socioeconomic classes opened up conversations about things like that, about classism. Like, I think that might have been the first time I heard the word classist, when they would call Joan classist and egregious. Like, that might have been my first time hearing the word. I'm not sure, but, we hear it all the time now. But I don't know. I think that opened up a lot of conversation. And the show was just a little bit more serious than Living Single. They definitely tackled some serious conversations and topics. Even though we got our laughs in a lot, there were also a lot of important topics covered. So they talked about race, classism, feminism, identity. They talked about colorism a couple times, I believe, the AIDS epidemic. Like, there was just a lot going on in the show, and I always appreciated that. So it was nice to rewatch it in 2020 and see how they discussed and tackled those topics. There was a lot of things I was like, ooh, like that definitely wouldn't have flown in 2020, but I think they did a good job for the time about the topics that they covered. So that is the real difference for me between Girlfriends and Living Single. I just think Girlfriends got real in a way that Living Single did not. Another thing that I think we all love about Girlfriends, you already know, the fashion. So there are whole Instagram pages dedicated to all of the girlfriends and their looks, their bags, their everything. So the clothes in Living Single are also amazing, but I'm personally not a big fan of 90s fashion. I definitely prefer 2000s fashion. So Girlfriends is right up my alley. They asked Mara in the Glamour article about the cast wardrobe, and I loved her answer. It's a little long, but I want to share it with y'all. Very important to me that Toni represented the label snob. It matches the boldness of her dreams. If I could escape poverty and reach these designer labels, it means something about what I can accomplish. For Lynn, it was about representing the free spirit, the bohemian artist. She brought her Seattle grunge style and Black experience to the table. Maya represents the stylish woman who can shop at the mall, the swap meet, or the sales rack at the department store and still look amazing because she cares about who she is. Joan was supposed to represent a mix of being timelessly classic while having a signature style. That's the amazing thing about Black women. No matter our economic status, we know how to put ourselves together and present ourselves. I think it's an act of rebellion because we're told so much by society how invisible or unattractive we are. End quote. So how do y'all feel about that? I loved that quote because you can see all of those aspects within the way the girls dress and also with the way they shop. Joan actually did a lot of vintage shopping. I feel like that was really reflected in her personal style. Toni was always going crazy with the brands and overspending. We definitely saw Maya at like the department store, and I don't remember ever seeing Lynn shop. I don't know, but she had cute outfits too. I feel like Lynn was definitely a thrift girl and probably a vintage store too, but not like a high-end vintage store like the ones Joan would go to. Maybe like, kind of mid-level vintage. But yeah, I definitely feel like it was reflected in the way they dress. And that last sentence was important to me as well because I really do think Black women, we have a special power about pulling ourselves together in the middle of adversity. Like, no matter what, one thing about us, we gonna look good. Okay, so some little known facts about Girlfriends. Did y'all know that all of the ladies are named after Black figures that Mara loves? She actually posted this on Instagram a while ago. She said, "For the pilot of Girlfriends, I only had the name of one character, Joan. I named the heartbeat of the show after my mother, the woman who is my biggest champion and supporter. The other women on the show are named after influential Black authors." So that means that Toni was named after Toni Morrison, Maya was named after Maya Angelou, and Lynn was named after Elin Harris. Another thing, so y'all know how people always compare Girlfriends to Sex and the City? That's actually really accurate because Mara was inspired by both Sex and the City and Living Single. In an interview with Vibe, she said, "When I saw Sex and the City, I didn't see myself represented. Also, the type of shows that were on for Black people were more like family sitcoms. I wanted to do more sophisticated shows for young adults. Lee Bowser had Living Single, and I wanted to build upon that and have something sexier and edgier. I thought my friends are a lot like that, and that's what motivated me to create Girlfriends. So there you have it. It was inspired by both shows. Things are about to get a little dark, y'all. I'm being dramatic, but honestly, I really do hate the final seasons of both of these shows. I'm gonna be honest. I really don't like the final seasons, but I will say the last season of Living Single is not as bad as the last season of Girlfriends, but it still ain't it in my opinion. The final seasons of both shows are missing main characters. On Girlfriends it's Tony, and on Living Single it's Kyle and kind of Regine. Tony doesn't appear in season 8 at all, and Kyle only appears in, I want to say, the first 2 episodes of season 5. And Kim Fields is in maybe 4 or 5 episodes. It could be even less. I knew that Jill Marie Jones, aka Tony, left the show because her contract was over and she did want to expand her career into film, but I didn't know why TC and Kim Fields weren't on the last season of Living Single. So apparently Kim Fields was just going through a couple mental health things and just wanted to get her mind back right, which is absolutely valid. Totally respect that. And then with TC, there was a little bit more drama behind the scenes. He was really, really vocal about his feelings that Warner Brothers neglected Living Single in favor of Friends. So y'all already know the show Friends. It was airing around the same time. So apparently most of the cast felt this way and agreed with him, but you know, there's always somebody that's the mouthpiece. Whoever is like, you know, like the strongest personality usually ends up being the spokesperson for the group, and that person was TC. And this led to him being fired, which is really unfortunate and messed up, y'all. I was really sad when I read that. Kyle was really, in my opinion, a very vital piece of the show, and I really did miss his presence on season 5. It was kind of weird, and I feel like that's why I don't like it as much, because there's not really any Kyle. And that was definitely a mistake, in my opinion, firing him. And I did not like Trip. My group chat already knows. Trip is the character that they replaced him with, kind of. Like, he ended up moving in with Regine and Khadijah when Sinclair got married and her and Overton moved into their own place. I just did not like that character. I wanted Kyle back. No offense to him, but all offense, low-key, Team Kyle. But anyway... Luckily for us as viewers, Kyle does return for the final episode. Regine does not appear, but we do get to hear how her story ends. So Living Single kind of gets tied up in a nice little bow. Definitely gets wrapped up better than Girlfriends. Everyone gets a happy ending, which is nice and makes sense because it just reflects the overall positivity of the show. You can tell there's something going on behind the scenes though, because I believe season 1 through 4 of Living Single, it's like, I want to say there are 20 episodes in each season, something like that. But the 5th season only has 13. I was like, why is it so short? So clearly they wanted to wrap that shit up. Like, clearly. Okay, now we're going to talk about the most depressing ending yet, which is Girlfriends season 8. So Girlfriends, I'm sure y'all already know, the ending is definitely premature and it shows. Girlfriends was actually canceled because there was a writer's strike happening at the time, and the producers announced that there would be no new episodes afterwards because it was going to be too expensive for the studio to make. I feel like there's a little bit more to that story, but you know, okay. We'll take that for now. But anyway, there was supposed to be a final tribute episode of it, and that just ended up not happening. I think like some show producers were saying it in interviews. I think Mara said it once, but something happened to make that not happen. And there's no happy ending here. The show just ends kind of strangely, for lack of a better word. If you've seen it, then you know. I won't do spoilers just in case y'all haven't seen it, but the whole final season is very lackluster in my opinion, and the final episode is even worse. So that is the depressing end of Girlfriends. We're gonna move on. Alright y'all, so here is my analysis of the female friendships on both shows. So with Girlfriends, the girls kind of give me more lovesick tease, and what I mean by that is their happiness kind of revolves around the men in their lives, especially Joan. Oh my god. Not that the women on Living Single don't talk about men a lot, but it doesn't really seem to control their happiness like the Girlfriends. Girlfriends, I mean, they're kind of quick to change their lifestyle behind a man, and we already know Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, is not going for that. I don't think any of the Living Single ladies were going for that. And then, like, sometimes they will fall out over men, and I just cannot see Living Single doing that. So That's my idea. I know it sounds like I just dragged Girlfriends, but hear me out. The friendships were definitely a little different on Girlfriends, but that's what made them more relatable, in my opinion, because we've all had girlfriends that, you know, have a man drive a wedge between them and another girl. We know girls who make dumb decisions around men. Some of y'all might even be that girl. I mean, it is what it is. All of that. We know women like that, right? And when I was younger, I definitely was more in awe of the women on Girlfriends more than anything else. But when you watch it as an adult, it definitely makes you mad because you're just like, girl, what are you doing? I don't know. Sometimes I will watch the show and be like, why are you doing this? And that was with every single character. I've had moments like that with all 4 of the women on Girlfriends. But that's what makes the friendships on Girlfriends a little more dynamic, in my opinion, because we know women that are just like them and make the same mistakes. And the friendships on Living Single, although I love them as well, the friendships were a little bit more romanticized, and I don't want to say it wasn't relatable because some people might actually really relate to that. But I just think it was more romanticized. Like, the show kind of eliminates the hardships of friendship, which is why it's easier to watch it, because there's never any real conflict between the 4 women. It's really them versus like outside figures. So like their ops are always like people outside of the friend group. You know what I mean? Like, we have like a fun back and forth between Maxine and Regine, but like it's like kind of playful. You know, it's not the same. And a similar situation, oh my God, I just thought of a really good poll question. I should have did best frenemies, Tony and Maya versus Regine and Maxine. That would have been a good one, dang. I'm mad I just thought of that. But I think like the Tony and Maya friendship was based on like classism and just felt like a little more mean. Not their friendship, I should have said like they're kind of like, you know, back and forth was kind of more mean, whereas like Maxine and Regine's back and forth was a little bit more fun. Like, they definitely used to drag each other, but it felt playful, and I don't know, it just felt based in more love to me. You can tell Maya and Tony kind of warm up to each other like in the later seasons, but yeah, I don't know. That's just my opinion. But yeah, Living Single kind of eliminates conflicts between the women. And that's why I think people just prefer to watch that show over and over again, because everyone who is an enemy is outside of the group. One thing I do want to say about Living Single is I do love that they have each other's backs like crazy. Like, even though Regine and Maxine argue, they always had each other's backs when it came down to it. And they really show up for each other. And not that the girlfriends don't, but the Living Single girls are almost always a united front, where there's a lot of frenemy vibes going on in Girlfriends. And sometimes like they didn't show up for each other, but when they did, they really, really did show up. But sometimes they dropped the ball. Also, there was a lot of competition happening between Girlfriends. I don't know if it was just Joan for real, because I felt like she always wanted to be like better than people, but sometimes it felt like they weren't always happy for each other. My idea is that there's a sense of competition because, I don't know, the women on Girlfriends, their attitudes were a little different. They were just more established, besides Lynn, in their careers and a bit older than the women on Living Single. So they kind of competed with each other more because they're quote unquote eligible, if that makes sense. So the Living Single girls are like mid-20s, and then the Girlfriends are, when the show starts, they're late 20s approaching their 30s. So I think by the time the series ends, they're like 34 or 35 or something like that. And then Maya is like a little bit younger than them. But the Living Single girls kind of stayed in their own lanes, like with, you know, their career paths and their goals, but it just felt like Girlfriends, they weren't always happy for each other. But again, I feel like all of that stuff is relatable. There are people like that, you know? And then another thing, on Living Single, when a character would make a mistake or do something, it didn't linger and last long like how a lot of stuff was dragged out in Girlfriends, and it was typically over by the end of the episode. And the Living Single episodes typically end with like some sort of like kumbaya moment. But remember, that's not realistic for real. Like, it's not, oh, we forget kumbaya. Like, life ain't like that. And even the characters that were supposed to be villains, like Regine, did the right thing at the end. Like, when one of Regine's guy friends is getting married to a woman who's cheating, she speaks up, even though she's being paid to plan the wedding. That woman was played by Vivica Fox, and the friend was Heavy D. Remember that? So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there's always a happy ending in Living Single, but I respect the realness of Girlfriends for not making everything peaches and cream. And I personally categorize Girlfriends as being more about a group of friends navigating relationships, and Living Single is more so a show about friendship, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does. So moving on, I had to hit up my group chats and see what they thought about how both of the shows measure up to each other, because when all the Black programming dropped on Netflix, we were constantly talking about them Girlfriends, Half and Half, the Parkers, everything. So wanted to get their opinions. This was definitely a strong topic. Friendships were ended. People left the group chat. No, I'm just joking. But I feel like my friends felt strongly about this, so I want to share what some of them had to say. We all agreed that the girls on Girlfriends had more inspirational lifestyles. They did more traveling. They had a little bit more fun. They were definitely women that you would aspire to be like. But you have to remember, the Living Single cast was in their 20s, and the Girlfriends cast was approaching 30 when the show started. So we're talking about more established women. So it's kind of hard to compare them in that sense, but yeah. They also said that both shows were good depictions of their eras. I agree. The 90s were happier times, a little bit more colorful and carefree. The 2000s were a little bit different, more serious. We had the financial crisis happening. You know, it just was different. We all loved that the supporting characters on Living Single just had a little bit more, you know, like depth to them, basically. Like, I can't remember his name, but the Jamaican guy that worked at Flavor, he even had his own story arc. It just felt like the supporting characters were a little bit more thought out. And that's not even in comparison to Girlfriends. That's just in sitcoms in general, especially ones that were on at this time. And we also felt like Kyle and Overton's characters had a lot more growth than William. Definitely. Kyle and Overton, out of both shows, those are my favorite male characters on both shows. And if I had to pick one, I'm going with Kyle. The last thing we talked about, which I thought was really interesting, is Living Single's depiction of Black women in New York City and the accuracy versus Girlfriend's depiction of Black women in LA and that accuracy. So I have mixed feelings on that one. I definitely want to hear what you guys think about it. I'm curious, but I thought that Living Single's depiction of Black women in New York City was pretty accurate, but my friends who were born and raised in LA, some of them still live in LA, they didn't think that the Girlfriend's depiction of Black women in LA was accurate. So for people from either side, like, what do y'all think about that? I mentioned earlier that I did a poll on Instagram a few days ago asking you guys questions about both shows, and I just want to say before we get into the answers, thank you guys so much for participating. It was super fun. You guys really shared some interesting perspectives on both shows. So I just want to say thank you for that. Make sure you follow me on Instagram if you don't already at the Vixen Memoirs, because I definitely want to do more stuff like that with you guys. Love interacting with y'all and just, you know, going back and forth on our thoughts. So we'll definitely do more stuff. So follow me on Instagram if you don't. All right, so I want to share the responses to the polls, and then I'll share my thoughts as well. All right, so here we go. First question. Which show had the finer love interest? So we had 51% for Living Single and then 49% for Girlfriends. That is very, very close, but I agree with the majority. Living Single. When I saw Girlfriends in the lead, at first I was very confused. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, because I just feel like the 90s fine man was just very, very different. There were definitely some fine men on Girlfriends, but men just didn't slap as hard in the 2000s as they did in the 90s. And I feel like Khadijah and Regine had the finest men out of everybody from both shows, so I'm going with Living Single as well. The next question. Who would you rather be friends with? And the choices for this one were Regine or Tony. So it was 55% Regine and then 45% Tony. I definitely agree with that. I would choose Regine. Regine is just a better friend overall. Like, she was self-absorbed, but not to the extent that Tony was. And Regine was definitely there for people when they needed her. I would still be friends with Tony, though. I think that Regine would be more of, like, she would be a closer friend. Tony would probably be a party friend. The next one was, this one, I love this one. Who are you hiring as your lawyer? And the choices were Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, or Joan. And this one was 29% Joan and 71% Maxine. It's absolutely Maxine for me. If you would let Joan represent you, you must want to go to jail. Period. Like, she don't even like law. Like, Joan don't even like practicing law. So I don't know why 29% of y'all chose Joan, but you definitely want to go to jail if you choose her. Next, which show deserves a reboot? And this one was actually 50-50. So 50% Living Single, 50% Girlfriends. I'm going to go with Girlfriends, and this is why. Like I said earlier, Living Single got wrapped up in a pretty little bow for us. You know, everybody got their happy ending. Everybody's story was closed out, right? Although I miss them, at least we had that privilege of a clear ending. Girlfriends, on the other hand, was a really, really good show that just crashed and burned. And they didn't deserve that ending. They truly did not. So I would say they are more deserving of a reboot than Living Single, because we just need to see what happened to them after that. The next question was the better friend turned lover, and your choices were Joan and William versus Kyle and Maxine, and it was 16% William and 84% Kyle. Y'all are absolutely right. Y'all have taste. And Kyle is the winner, but I shouldn't have to say why, but I'm gonna tell y'all why. Kyle was Afrocentric, he was funny, he loved black women, he was successful, and William was just, y'all watch the show. Like, why would y'all choose William? William was a Republican, no shade to anybody. He had that going on. He was disrespectful a little bit. Like, he would say his little slick stuff about black women. I would never ever choose him over Kyle. And also, when you look at like Joan and William, they definitely had chemistry, but it was friendship chemistry. That should have never happened. That segment of the show where they date, cut it. It literally, if I rewatch Girlfriends, I will definitely make sure to skip the episodes where they were a couple. We didn't need to see it. Absolutely not. Next question. Would you live in 90s New York City or 2000s LA? And we got 64% 90s New York City and then 36% 2000s LA. I disagree with y'all. I would have chose 2000s LA, and that's because I don't think I would have survived 90s New York City. I don't know if I'd be here doing this podcast if I was in the 90s in New York City. Like, I wouldn't be with y'all today. I wouldn't be with y'all. Like, and then also, like, I grew up in DC, so I would go to New York a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I kind of got an experience, even though I was a kid, I kind of saw what it was like, so I would like to see what 2000s LA was like. So yeah, I'm going with that one. Which cast closet would you raid? It was 81% Girlfriends and 19% Living Single. Absolutely agree. Girlfriends for sure. 2000 style, like I said, way more my style. 90s style was a little different, but I just can't see myself wearing stuff like that today. So yeah, I'm going with Girlfriends too. The next question was who threw the best parties, and your choices were Regine versus Joan. 40% Joan, 60% Regine. Absolutely agree. So they both were control freaks when it came to parties, but Joan went a little too hard to control the vibe, and because she would do that and not just let the party flow organically, her parties fell flat a lot. Like, the one that really stands out to me is that episode where she tried to have like a speed dating party or something, and everyone invited their ex. Like, that party was weird. No. I would definitely pick Regine to plan a party for me. The next question was best cast chemistry, and it was 76% Living Single and then 24% Girlfriends. I am also going to choose Living Single because I felt like the show was more positive and fun, and that's why there's a stronger chemistry there. But I don't think that the Girlfriends didn't have chemistry. I think all of the characters kind of meshed well together, but the Living Single cast was more believable to me as friends. Like, I wonder if Tony, Joan, and Lynn met outside of college. Like, actually, Tony and Joan knew each other from childhood, and then they met Lynn in college. But imagine if they had all met as adults after college. Do y'all really think they would be friends? I don't think so. I don't know. So yeah, I'm going to go with Living Single too. The next question was your favorite bougie babe, and your choices were Tony and Regine. And it was 44% Regine and 56% Tony. I love both of these characters. But I'm going to pick Tony because of dark skin solidarity. But I definitely see why Regine got 44%. I feel like Regine was better at being bougie on a budget. She also would overspend like Tony, but not as much. Like, I feel like Regine just was better at like kind of getting around the price tag on things. So I see why y'all chose her, but I'm picking Tony. This question was best cast careers, and it was 69% living single and then 31% girlfriends. I agree with that for sure. The careers on Living Single were definitely more enviable to me. I would have loved to work at Flavor. That would have been right up my alley. I liked when Sinclair was doing improv and stuff. So, yeah, I think they had the best careers. Favorite slacker turned successful artist. Our choices were Lynn and Sinclair. Sinclair won by 59% and Lynn had 41%. I agree. I love Lynn's character. And she was definitely a way bigger slacker than Sinclair. I almost wouldn't even call Sinclair a slacker. She just was like country. No shade to my country listeners, but y'all know what I mean. I'm going to pick Sinclair as my favorite because Sinclair didn't really just fall into stuff like Lynn. Like, Lynn just would do, like, anything. And it wasn't believable to me. Like, when she became a singer, it still didn't feel like she was passionate about it. I felt like she just did it because it was, like, people told her she was good at it. So she's like, I'm going to go with this. Whereas Sinclair really wanted to act, and she believed in acting, and she loved improv. So I'm choosing Sinclair as well. Best resident writer, and your choices were Khadijah and Maya. Maya had 27% and Khadijah had 73%. We actually argued about this one in the group chat too. I would pick Khadijah as well. I definitely agree with y'all because Maya's book would have been satire to me. Like, that's a book that I would probably laugh at, no shade. But I love the source and vibe, and Flavor was clearly modeled after those. My friend Dory brought that up. Shout out to Dory. She brought those up. She brought that up, and that made a lot of sense to me. So I would have personally felt like Khadijah was the better writer. But yeah, we definitely argued about this. This was funny. My friends were saying that they would choose Maya because Flavor was always going down. I think my friend Ash said that. Yeah, she said that Flavor was always like at risk of like shutting down. And I get it. Like, that's an interesting perspective as well. I just think Khadijah is the better writer though. All right, next. Overall favorite of the two. And this is the last poll style question. Overall favorite of the two. Drum roll, please. We had 56% for Living Single and 44% for Girlfriends. That's still quite close. And because it was close, I had to add on 2 more questions that I didn't plan on doing, but I wanted for people to tell me which was their favorite and why. I wanted to know why. This question is really hard for me to answer, so I'm gonna say, honestly, I do think the 2 shows are incomparable. I think they represented different times. So it's so hard to compare them, but as far as watchability, like, I would honestly rewatch both. Like I said, there are some episodes of Girlfriends that I would absolutely skip. But it's hard to pick a favorite, but so I'm not going to do it. But I was really curious to know which ones you guys like the best and why. So I want to share some of the answers to those specific questions. Okay, so first I want to share the answers of people who chose Living Single as their favorite. So let's get into theirs. Okay, first person is Hustle RC. Their Instagram name is spelled HUSTLRC, and they said they, referring to Living Single, were more down to earth and relatable. I tried watching Girlfriends again, and it was just a no. I understand where you're coming from with that. I definitely think that rewatching Girlfriends is stressful. I've said it multiple times throughout this episode. The things that they do will truly irritate you. Like, especially Joan for me. Like, what? But they all do stupid shit throughout the entire show. But I get, like, watching it as an adult and being like, this is not it. There was a sincere lack of conflict between the friend group, and I felt like Girlfriends kind of showed those kinds of friendship dynamics better. But yeah. Next is Sad Slump God, and she said, funnier without the ignorance of Girlfriends. Girlfriends definitely had some cringy moments. I agree with you there, girl. Like, absolutely have some cringy moments that were quite ignorant. Quite ignorant. I'm sure y'all saw some of the think pieces that came out about the show, some of the things that happened. And I do feel like I don't really remember any instances like that where I was like, yikes, on Living Single. I'm sure they exist because that show is even older than Girlfriends. But I don't really remember, anything. I think that it just was funny and like positive overall. But I agree with you. Next was, it's funny and the characters are so much more relatable in my opinion. Also, Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, LOL. And that was Pun-Eyed Thistle who said that. HONEYEDTHISTLE. I agree. Living Single is so funny. I could rewatch and rewatch and rewatch that show. Maxine is my favorite character on there. We love dark skin solidarity again. All right. So the next person was L_OXOX, ELLE_OXOX. That's actually one of my best friends. Hey, Gab. Okay. So she said about Living Single, the energy, the vibrancy, I think they express their issues with their friends more head on instead of letting it always boil out of control. Absolutely. We see each other. That's why that's my best friend. But absolutely. I think that the problems on Girlfriends were so drawn out sometimes. Their relationships were drawn out. When they would beef with each other, it was drawn out. I feel like Tony and Joan beefed like all of was that season 6 or 7? One of them. They beefed the whole, it was just too much sometimes. Although I think that can be realistic, it was a lot for me at some point. Dolo Sid is spelled SYD. They said, funnier, finer men didn't always focus on relationships, period. I agree with you there. Living Single definitely did not rely on relationship drama as much as Girlfriends did. I think the Girlfriends women, and this could also be because they were older, like they were more marriage minded than the women on Living Single were. So they were just always trying to find their husband or whatever. I feel like Lynn was the only person that kind of wasn't. And then Maya was married, whatever. But like, I agree. I think the show relied a lot on romantic relationships, which is cool, but I do appreciate that we get some other aspects and topics in Living Single. The next one, and this was my favorite, from Willis XII, so WILLISXII. She said, Queen Latifah and seeing her body type on TV for the first time. I so agree. I love Khadijah's character. She was really funny. I love that she was like the level-headed person in the group. She was often the voice of reason, and I just loved seeing like a plus size woman just getting all types of love. Like I said earlier, she had the finest love interest on the show. Her boyfriends and like relationships, they were enviable to me. Like absolutely. So I can totally see why seeing her on TV and with her body type and being so desirable like that was important. That was definitely powerful. I love Khadijah. Was from It's Dory, ITSDORIEE. That is another one of my best friends. Hey Dory, this is her second shout out this episode. But she said, funny, love Queen Latifah if you don't know. More relatable, better friendships. Khadijah and Max are icons, period. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that the show was funny. We had Queen Latifah and Kim Coles on there who are hilarious. All the other actors, they had really great chemistry. It just was good. Khadijah and Max, those characters are definitely iconic. I think all the characters are iconic, but definitely them. So I feel you, bestie. Next is my girl Taylor. Hey T, this is one of my close friends. Absolutely love Taylor. Her Instagram is TAYLR dot, like an actual dot, and then the letter T. She said, I think it was more inclusive and well-rounded. Absolutely. Like we just talked about, Khadijah's character was more inclusive. And the show just touched a variety of instances, and it didn't rely on romantic relationships as much. That's not to say that Girlfriends didn't touch on different topics. Like I said earlier, Girlfriends definitely talked about more serious things, but I did like that, our characters didn't revolve around men. So I agree. It was definitely more well-rounded. Okay, so the last answer for Living Single as a favorite comes from my girl Lolita Bombshell. Lolita Bombshell, spelled exactly how the words are spelled. And what she said was, this is actually a long one, and I love what she said, so I'm going to share it all. So she said, the admiration they had for one another was wholesome, but not corny. I definitely agree. Like I said, they kind of lived in a little bit of a fantasy world where there wasn't much conflict in their friendships. but there was always that kumbaya moment at the end, but it never bothered me, you know, like that, those kind of moments never felt cheesy or anything like that. It really did feel wholesome and just like, you know, realistic for them, for that specific friend group. And she also said, she told me why she didn't like girlfriends, and I wanted to share this answer and see if any of the people who prefer living single relate. She says, okay, so first and foremost, that was some of the most insecure and catty women in TV. I probably emulated Joan as a child because she was truly my favorite, but I had more of a style like Lynn. Joan was such a pushover and desperate for validation, it hurt to watch. Okay, Joan, don't get me wrong, I dragged Joan, but I did love Joan's character. But when she went like kind of spiraling, I think that was season 6, that was really hard to watch. I agree. Lynn, I really have nothing to say about her or William. This is what Lolita Bombshell said. That part, a lot of people don't care for Lynn's character or felt like she didn't need to be in the show. Some people say that about William too. I like both characters, but I have heard people say stuff like that. She also said Tony is just a horrible person all the way around, but so unapologetic about it. It's appealing, but I would never be a friend of hers, maybe meet for brunch. I agree. Like I said, Tony would definitely be my party friend, my going out friend. I think she was terrible, but I think they were all kind of terrible in different ways. Then she says, Maya, I hated Maya because she had so much potential, and every time she wasted that shit on Daryl, who in my mind beat her. Okay. All right, let's get real. Remember when they kind of touched on him like beating Maya? I could be tripping, but I feel like there was a little slight innuendo there that he might have. I know they never talked about him cheating again, and he did, and we just acted like he never cheated first, but yeah, okay. Yeah. Then she said, and her mama, referring to Maya, is really why she's so messed up. What y'all think? Her mama was kind of cool to me. I don't remember anything about her mom. Okay, anyway. Then, this is the last thing she said. Besides the outfits and the set decor, I think it should truly be taken off of TV. Yes, it showcased black women, beautiful black women, but they were so toxic. I see that now watching it. Not one person knew how to be a good friend or love themselves. Besides Lynn, she might have loved herself, although she used the whole and although I'm not sure what she meant here. She's basically saying like Lynn tried to like seek pity from people and she racked up a bunch of degrees for no reason. I guess at least she's cultured. I'm glad they all found their way in the end, though. Horrible show still. Okay, so my girl has some strong opinions. Thank you so much, Lolita. I don't think the show should be taken off air. Like, I think that there are a lot of women who are like that in real life. And I think it's realistic in that sense. And I think a lot of women struggle to find a way to love themselves and respect themselves. I mean, I'll be candid. I had a time where like I didn't really know who I was, or like I struggled with self-love. I'm sure we can all relate to that. But I think the good thing about Girlfriends, even if you hate the characters, like you hate them, I think we can all say we know someone like them, or we've been there in our lives at some point. And I think they were all just kind of growing. The show started at like a pivotal age, leaving your 20s, entering your 30s. So, and I think that's a hard space for a lot of women. So I don't think it should be taken off the air, girl. But I get what you mean. And they were toxic to each other. And they all had their moments where they weren't good friends. Who do you guys think was the best friend? I should have asked that in the poll too. Who do you guys think was the best friend from Girlfriends? I'm going to say Maya was the most loyal and dependable friend, followed by Joan, for sure. Yeah, but they all had their moments where they were not good friends. But I would say the person who was best at friendship was Maya. So yeah, thank you, Miss Lolita. I definitely, first of all, this is how this convo happened. She didn't just send me all of this randomly, y'all. Just want to let y'all know that. She was like, oh my God, don't get me started on Girlfriends. And I said, girl, get started on Girlfriends. I want to hear it. So that's how she ended up sending that. But yes, thank you, girl. Okay, so I'm going to move on to people who chose Girlfriends as their favorite. Okay, so this one is from Curly, CURLY_bibliophile_. And she said it talks about women's issues, and I can relate to it. I definitely agree. I think that, like I've said a million times on this episode, Girlfriends definitely touches on more issues that affect women than Living Single did, and I will always appreciate the show for that. Absolutely. Then Ziggy Galore, hey boo, so it's Ziggy dot, like an actual dot, Galore, said, I love the black feminine energy and the fashions. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We love the style, we love the set decor, we love all of the I don't know. Girlfriends was just filmed perfectly, and I don't know. I think the clothes and like the style of filming definitely holds up today. Totally agree. So this is my friend Elijah. Hey Elijah. So his Instagram is EJ from BKLYN. He said, Tony Childs representing dark-skinned black girl luxury, period. That's it about that. Then he said, captures the look of a very unique view of Los Angeles. Like I said earlier, some of my friends from LA felt like this show didn't properly depict black women in LA, but like Elijah says here, this is kind of a unique view of Los Angeles. Me and Dory talked about this yesterday. It might have been different for them in LA versus people who grew up there because they were all transplants. So I think, life was just different for them. So yeah. And then he also said greater emphasis on female friendship dynamics. I beat that into the ground. Y'all know I definitely agree with that. I think it showed us different places in friendship, and you're not always in a great place. It's not everyday kumbaya when it comes to your friendships. Agreed. And then lastly, he said Joan carried a Birkin before a lot of us knew what that was. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, one thing you can never take away from Girlfriends is the style shown by all four women. So absolutely. Next is Vintage Coochie. Hey boo. So it's vintage dot, like an actual dot, Coochie, Coochie. Y'all know how to spell Coochie. But anyway, they said, love the positive representation of successful black women. Absolutely. Also loved the topics it touched on: colorism, racial profiling, discrimination. Yes, Vintage Coochie. Absolutely. Definitely positive representations of successful black women. And like Mara said in the quote from Glamour that I quoted earlier, I love that they had a character like Lynn because Lynn did not know what she wanted to do. And we've seen white characters like that on TV, but it was nice to see a black woman who was kind of in a, stage where she really didn't know what she was doing. And that stage can absolutely last for years. It lasted a really long time for Lynn, and I think, it's good for people to see stuff like that. And also, I think all of the women except for Tony had a career pivot at some point, like when Joan opens a restaurant, when Lynn becomes a singer, when Maya goes from receptionist to author. Like they all kind of pivoted. So I agree with you, Vintage Coochie. Okay, so the next person is going to be anonymous, but she said, although the majority of the girls were shit people, they gave us drama and suspense. Period. Although I do think a lot of the storylines lasted too long in Girlfriends, like we could have definitely moved on, but there was definitely a lot of drama and suspense within the show. Absolutely, there was definitely a lot of drama and suspense, and I love that. And it, they kept us on the edge of our seats sometimes. Absolutely. The next one is from Fan of Life, FANNEOFLIFE. And she said the different topics they explored in the show. Y'all know how I feel about that, period. The next one is from always.and.asset. And she said, Girlfriends was more relatable for me, especially considering the age I am now watching it. Absolutely. I think Girlfriends was just inspirational. And a lot of people said that to me in their answers, that they felt like very inspired by Girlfriends when they were younger, but they kind of have a different view of it now. I think we just understand more of what these women are going through and, why they are the way they are, even though it frustrates us, but it's definitely relatable. I have a Tony, a Joan, a Maya, and a Lynn all in my friend group. Like, honestly, like, I want to be Tony. I always tell people this. I want to be a Tony, but I'm low-key Lynn. I think I'm like a mixture of Tony and Lynn. But yeah, actually, that's a good question. Who do you guys feel like you are? I don't know. I feel like I am definitely both. Final one is from _the J spot. So it's _THEJAYYSPOTT. And she said each character was relatable, the storylines were relatable, and the comedy was better. I think the comedy was better in Living Single, personally. And I would say the character and storylines in both were relatable, but I'm going to agree with it being more so relatable in Girlfriends because it just, I don't know, Girlfriends just had more diverse topics, and that's realistic. So yeah, I agree with the J spot. All right, so those were you guys' answers. Thank you so much for participating. I love stuff like this, so please follow on Instagram. I love hearing y'all's perspective, and we will definitely do more stuff like this. So on to the next segment. I know this is a long show, but we're going to be gone for a while, so I wanted to make it kind of long. All right, next segment. Okay, y'all. So I also asked some of my friends if they think that any shows that are on now or have been on in recent times are comparable to Living Single or Girlfriends. And here are some of the names that came up. Bigger, Insecure, Sisters, and Girls. So I have never seen Girls. And Insecure, I do not watch. I could not, I'll be honest, y'all. Please don't take my black card away. I just couldn't get into it in the first season. I know a lot of y'all probably watch it, so let me know if you think it's worth a second chance, or like, should I try to get through the first season, or should I just let it go? Because it does seem like it gets better, I can tell. So let me know. I think I know about Girls is I never watched it because it's based in New York City. When it came out, I lived in New York, and there were not really many black girls. I don't think there were any. Were there any black women on that show? I know they had some black men on there, but I don't know if there was ever a black girl on that show, so I just was never interested in watching it. And then, like I said, Insecure, I have not watched in full, but my friend Dory, hey again Dory, she suggested that I at least check out season 4 of Insecure, just to observe the deterioration of Molly and Issa's relationship, and I did, and she was on point. Reminded me a lot of the trajectory of Tony and Joan's friendship. Like, Molly gives me, I'm happy for you until you're doing better than me vibes, and then Issa is just, and I also saw this in the episodes of season 1 I did see, Issa's kind of passive aggressive, so I can see how those two clash, especially when one is doing better than the other. They get into arguments really easily, just like a lot of women we know, especially like Tony and Joan, and I can see a frenemy arc coming in for these two. So that kind of made me interested to see season 5, because I wonder what's going to happen to them after this. I can kind of see them either becoming like distant friends or not being friends at all, or just shading each other for a long time. And I find that relatable because I know y'all know 2 girls like this, or you might be the girl that's kind of stuck in that weird frenemy friendship. I actually know 2 people that are just like this, and I'm like always wondering why they're still friends. But I don't know what it feels like to be in that kind of situation, because I mean, I've had friends that we've kind of drifted apart and I still care about them, but like I said, I don't know what it feels like to be in that kind of situation where you love someone so much, but like y'all are like low-key mortal enemies. So their friendship reminded me a lot of Tony and Joan. Okay, and then another show I wanted to talk about was the Netflix reboot of She's Gotta Have It. Did y'all watch that travesty? Oh my gosh. It got canceled, but thank God it did. I'm sorry, Spike Lee. I love Spike, but that show was awful for a variety of reasons. But I think one of the worst things about the show is that Nola was a terrible friend. Now, a lot of people who watched season 1 and 2 would say that she was just a terrible character, which I agree with, but she was a really bad friend. People talk about Tony, but Nola was the worst to me. First of all, she was openly sleeping with and flaunting her friend's ex, which we found out in the second season. I know a lot of people might have skipped the second season, but one of her dudes was with her friend first, and she was openly flaunting this man, which was not cool. She was never really there for her friends, in my opinion. She barely supported them. And when she did support them, she was getting something out of it. And she was just overall a train wreck. Like, she is the kind of friend that would give me so much anxiety behind her. First of all, I would always be worried about her. And second, like, she just wasn't good to her friends. I felt like she emotionally dumped on them a lot and just wasn't there for them like that in return. And her friendships with women were definitely secondary to these dudes she was messing with. And I don't like girls like that. I'm a major girls girl. So me and that character never really vibed. She was beautiful. Shout out to DeWanda Wise. Loved looking at her. Loved her apartment. Did not like Nola as a character at all. So I wanted to mention that because that was one of the worst examples of Black friendship that I've seen on TV in recent years. That just was awful. But anyway, what modern day shows do you guys think compared to Girlfriends and or Living Single, do you think they even exist? Do you think like we're never going to see friendship in that way again? Like, what do y'all think? And give me some show recommendations. That is my film or TV review. Let me know what you guys think of both shows. If you didn't get to share in the poll, you can email me at VIXENPODCAST@gmail.com, or you can DM me on Instagram, which is at the Vixen Memoirs. And yeah, this was really, really fun, y'all. Like, I loved doing this episode. I definitely want to do something similar next season. And speaking of next season, don't forget, we will be back on March 3rd for season 3. Really, really excited. The Vixen Book Club is going to officially kick off on February 1st. The book, the PDF of the book will be emailed out on January 22nd. So make sure you go sign up for the book club right now and read with us. I definitely want to read a lot more this year. I already read a lot because of Vixen, but I kind of want to read for leisure a little bit more and just have people to talk with about the book. So I'm really excited for the book club. So if y'all want to, make sure you read a book a month, we're going to hold you accountable. Go ahead and join the Vixen Book Club. You can do it by going to thevixenmemoirs.com. And I will see you guys on March 3rd for another episode. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to Vixen. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave us a review. If you have a submission, feel free to email VIXENPODCAST@gmail.com. We will be back on March 3rd, 2021 with an all-new episode.